Hello to those listening. This is an orator here with the freest of speech. And this time, I would like to talk about the national debt in the U.S. And if you really care about it, you're going to want a Democratic president and a Republican House. Now, to begin, I would like to start with a word, and that word is fact. And it is defined as something that truly exists or happens, something that has actual existence. Two, a true piece of information. Now, I started with this word because it seems that people are told so many things that real information, real facts become blurred in the process. So, with this definition, I want to go over to this Wikipedia article. Now, I know you may be saying to yourself, well, wait a minute, you're talking about facts. Wikipedia could be edited by individuals who have an agenda. And that is 100% true. And I agree with you. But I didn't come to the Wikipedia article because I'm going to take it as truth. I come to this Wikipedia article because this Wikipedia article has condensed the information down to a point where any individual person can use this as a stepping stone to get the better information. That's how I used it. But instead of going through the 15 or 16 different things and all the different books and the people, I'm going to use this because it's more simple. And it simply states some things as if, using the last four Republican presidents, George Herbert Walker Bush, George W. Bush, Reagan, Gerald Ford versus Clinton, Carter, Kennedy. They're showing that the Republican presidents increased the national debt, Democratic presidents brought it down. And this is why began this by saying that if you care about the national debt, you want Democrats in power because it seems that the only time Republicans are interested in restraining spending is when they're not in charge. Now you may be saying, remember you started this with fact, right? Well then, I'm going to go to the most recent vice president and I'll let him speak for himself.
And to cut taxes at the same time. So the I'm not opposed under certain circumstances to running deficits. The debt is another problem, and we've gotten to the point now where, especially because of entitlement programs, but because it really hasn't been much done by way of trying to restrain.
Now, this was the last Republican vice president speaking on the deficit, saying that it really doesn't matter under certain circumstances. As long as you're doing A to get to B, the deficits don't seem to matter. Well, let's check out what the Republican Party stance is on the deficit now. And we'll be taking a look at January 2015 Meet the Press appearance that Paul Ryan was saying.
We don't put in place the rest of his agenda, which are all these tax increases he's calling for. So, look, the president has done two big rounds of tax increases. It's one of the reasons why we have the stagnant economy we do. He's practicing yet again envy economics, and it doesn't work.
Now, that seems like that's an entirely different tune that they're singing here, isn't it? Where now deficits matter, even though when the Republican president was in office, Paul Ryan was in the House and he voted for all the things that blew up the debt, whether it be the expansion to Medicare or the war. But we need to go check out another word to get my to truly understand what is happening here. And as soon as that damn page loads, I can actually get to it. Okay, cut that part out. Now that word is deficit. And the word deficit is defined as this: an amount, such as an amount of money that is less than the amount that is needed. Two, The amount by which a person or team is behind in a game or contest. 3. A problem that causes a decrease in some ability. Now, I'm going back to the first one because we're talking about money here. And it says an amount such as a lack of funds. That's what it's saying. So the thing is, the only way for one to incur debt is to run a deficit. Meaning that if you're a person who's budget conscious, you would never agree to anything that will put you in a deficit, because the minute you go into a deficit, you go into a debt. This is no different than a regular household. If a person goes from full time to part time, your home now runs a deficit. If you go from having a medium minimum wage job to now making twice as much money, your home goes into a surplus. Now, if you take your surplus and spend it into oblivion, then you run a deficit. If you take your lack of funds and you hold on to it, you're very conservative with it, and you just spend what you need to spend, you can pretty much coast. But these are basic things that aren't complicated for people to understand. I know people always say that governmental budgeting is such a complicated thing. It's so mind numbingly confusing, but it really isn't. It really comes down to intake versus output. If you're bringing in more money than you're spending, you run a surplus. If you're spending more money than you bring in, you run a deficit. And if you run a deficit, you incur debt. So, in conclusion, it seems to me that if you're a person that truly cares about the national debt of the United States, you want a Democratic president and a Republican House. Because it seems to me that the only time the Republicans truly care about budgeting is when they aren't in power. And this was an orator here with the freest of speech. Thanks for listening.